There's always the problem when you start Googling stuff that I've done that before to self-diagnose.
The WebMD.
And I basically come away with I have whatever I look up, I have.
Yeah. Well, that's the way it is. I mean, they've gotten, I think, better at saying like most of the time, if this is gas or whatever, which reminds me of a Little House episode where Nellie Olson's mom, I can't remember her name, but you remember her? She was like a raging.
Oh, yeah. They were the villains of the series.
Yeah. So she, and the poor henpecked, like, dad.
Yeah.
But he's kind of passive aggressive too. I didn't like him either.
I when I was younger, I found his passive aggressiveness entertaining. The older I get, I look back and have no respect for the man. He's like the father bear from the Berenstain Bears.
Oh,
who
gosh.
I hate those books.
I do too.
They're terrible.
Well, because it's weird though, because you would think, like, in theory, that they'd be books we would like, because you would think that they pass on good, like, values and stuff. But when you actually read them, you're right. The dad is a bumbling buffoon
with no balls.
No,
sackless. Well, I guess all sack. He is whipped in the worst way possible. That man needs a punch in the face. So I never liked the Berenstain Bears, and I couldn't vocalize it. And the late Charles Krauthammer.
Oh yeah,
you got to do a little Google search. Actually had an article in the 80s, I believe, discussing how much he hates the Berenstain Bears and why.
Oh really?
And it's Krauthammer in the zone.
I like Krauthammer.
Yeah, and just lays it out. There's Berenstain Bears are the worst. Nellie Olson's dad.
So Nellie Olson's dad was that way, but there was an episode. Nellie Olson's mom has these stomach pains, and she's absolutely sure that she's dying. And she goes into the doctor, and Doc tells her, goes through like this long description of what she has,
right?
And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I knew it. Am I going to be okay?" And he's like, "What you have is gas,"
which is probably one of the more unrealistic things of Little House of Bread, because probably back then they would have given her a bottle of snake oil and a handful of leeches and told her to go home and figure it out, to let the demons out of her body or something like that.
Absolutely, they'd blow smoke and all that good stuff.
So we've spent some time here today, and I've been impressed that you haven't commented on my outfit. And I will discuss it. I'm in full.
Well, I saw you getting out of the car.
Yeah,
I did do a double take.
Because I am in full softball coach regalia here.
You were the most dad, and you're always in dad mode. This is the most dad I've seen you.
Well, when my daughter and I had a chance to buy matching cleats, or white and blue, which go with the rest of what I have on, it was a great day. So. To clarify, in my Coach Steve persona, I am not head coach Steve. Someone else took on all the hard work, so I don't want to throw out there I'm a coach with all the work and paperwork and little horrible things that go along with that. So kudos to our head coach, who was great. I'm the assistant coach, which means I do make the commitment to show up at practice.
Yes,
and I get to first base coach, which is
I love it.
I adore first base coach, because all you have to do is say good job.
Yeah.
Say run hard to first.
Go.
And then go.
Do you give a fist bump when they get to first base?
Yeah. They get the fist bump.
Yeah.
And then you have to have the mental clarity, which I don't have all the time, of when someone gets it past the catcher to make sure they get to second base in time.
Now, have you gotten called out by the head coach for not being aggressive enough on the base pads or anything like that?
Not maybe last year one time, and then I got over it quickly, and then I became the guy that was a little bit sometimes you feel bad, you want to take advantage of the stuff, but you also have to pull yourself back in that it's children under the age of 10 playing softball,
right,
and doing that, but
it's you have to know, because I have first base coached, and you do have to understand. We're talking about kids softball and baseball, but you have to know what the coach's sort of philosophy is on that. Because I've had a couple times where I'm like, I'm not gonna take the extra base here. I mean, come on, the poor kid. But they're like, no, we got to take every base, because then there's the thing that if your team doesn't do it, then the other team does it, and it's like, oh, it's on, we're all going now.
And that's generally that we had that happen a couple years ago, which I think I was with this coach. Our kid was on the same team at the time, so we've been through that experience, so we agree with that. But the other thing that's been great is, so there's the first base coach, you're just all positive, all good job, and run hard. Yeah. I get the outfit and clothes. I've also picked up just some other things that cover a multitude of sins while coaching, and we've established that I'm pretty much not an athlete, but I'll end up in the cage, handling pitches, and put your back back a little more and keep your eye on the ball.
There you go.
90%, and it works. Is what's great. No, put your bat back a little bit more.
Well, I think specifically keep your eye on the ball is the best thing you can tell, and it's so cliche, but it's true.
You've seen enough times.
If you actually watch where the ball's going, your hands are automatically going to take your bat to where it goes. So good job. And to be very clear, we talk about your lack of athleticism, but at this point, I would say neither of us are what you would call athletic.
Those who can't teach, or in softball parlance, those who can't. First base coach.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome to Origin of Speaksies. My name is Scott. I'm here with my buddy Steve, and he's looking sharp in his assistant coach's outfit. Yep. And today we're going to be talking about some idioms, and the first one we're doing is cold shoulder. So this is one I've wanted to do for a while. It almost has made it in a couple times, like we did cold turkey and did some other ones like that. But it's the first time I've actually fitted in with some other ones. So,
and this is one that I feel like is used often. I use it. I think when you say it, you tell other people it doesn't need explanation. You give somebody the cold shoulder,
right?
And it just says everything. It's used enough that everyone knows what that means.
I would agree. I think it's good. I don't think it's used as much now. I feel like this is one that as a kid I heard it more. I don't know. Like, I feel like it's not as popular as it once was. I wouldn't be surprised if there are people that, younger people that haven't heard of this one. I could be wrong, though.
I need to ask my cherished millennial. Maybe
ask him.
Yeah, but I'll have to text him. And maybe that gets to the root of it. Is cold shoulder is something you got to do in person. It's kind of tough to give somebody the cold shoulder if you don't have to interact.
I'm actually going to disagree on this. Okay. Well, to give a cold shoulder. You know what I thought of? So let's establish what it means is basically that you're either not paying attention to someone, you're dismissing someone, you're maybe acting a little aloof, or you're just ignoring someone.
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe for all of our cherished millennials out there, think of it as getting left on red. Are you familiar with this term?
Not at all.
Good, you shouldn't be.
I'm kind of angry for some reason. Coach Steve isn't a fan of that term.
Yeah, so I'm glad you don't know what it means, but unfortunately I do. So getting left on red is basically if you text someone with red receipts or you message someone and you can see that they've read the message, but they don't reply. That's like awkward face emoji or whatever.
Right.
You don't want to get left on red. You get left on red, that means the person just hasn't deigned to reply. They saw it, because if there's not the red receipt, or if it's like on Instagram or something like that, you see they saw it. Why aren't you responding? Oh, you don't want to talk to me, right? So when I thought about getting the cold shoulder in the new era, it would be like getting left on red.
Okay.
So it was almost like in a romantic pursuit, like you get the cold shoulder. I think for some reason I always, as growing up, associate it with something like that. Okay. Like not so much more so than just somebody ignoring you. Like I wouldn't think of like my friend giving me the cold shoulder. It seems dramatic. And maybe that's why, but like I thought of it as a woman giving you the cold shoulder. And I always have like kind of a visual of like seeing her shoulder as she's like turned away from you.
I can see that.
Okay. So that's what it means. That's sort of how I envisioned it. I talked to our friend 3 Sheets girl about this one, and she had an idea which she said she always thought it meant if there are a bunch of people laying in a bed together, the person on the edge of the bed whose shoulder was hanging out had a cold shoulder. So if you give them the cold shoulder, you're making them be on the edge of the bed. So whoever's in the middle has warm shoulder. Like, I actually have the quote because I wrote this down when she told me. She said, the people in the middle get warm shoulders.
Right. So I am going to assume PG-13 glass half full, that she's referring to our proverbial back in the day, where maybe if there was a family bed, a lot of people were in that bed.
I think that's where she was going with it.
Okay, good. And it has nothing to do with lotions and robes and people with mustaches.
Well, she's come up a few times. The first one was where she got her nickname when she said that 3 sheets to the wind. Just so, let's do a recap of 3 Sheets Girl on the show.
Who is awesome, who I've met in person and is a legitimately cool person.
We love her, and there's a reason why I bounced these off of her. The first one was when 3 Sheets to the Wind came up. She said she thought it had something to do with when you're drunk and you're writing notes to someone and you're throwing the sheets in the air to them or something like that.
Yeah, and she said it in a way, too, that made me think that wasn't just what she's heard.
Right. Like, you said that's an experience. So then the next time she came up on the show, well, I actually don't remember. I know she came up a couple times, and I haven't gone back through our episodes. But the last one I remember was recently when she invited Steve to LARPing. Now, I will say that I don't think we've talked about this. I don't know if I told you this. She does not agree with the characterization of how that went down on the show. And she is preparing a rebuttal. So I don't know if she's going to try to crash the show or if she just wants to call in.
She's an outside-the-box thinker. So I have a feeling that when she does, it'll be in a way we won't expect. And I
agree. She said she does not feel that it went down that way exactly. And but LARPing, Steve made sure to pass on the fact that he's a married man, yada, yada. So, and then now with, again, the quote, the people in the middle get warm shoulders. So I said, I never thought about that. It could be for all the ones we have heard before. Yeah. Okay. We're going to move on from that one, because I don't think it's that. Actually, I know it's not that. But, okay. So Steve, I want to paint a picture for you. So it's medieval times, not the restaurant, which is delightful, but an actual castle back in medieval times. And so what would happen is, you can tell by the way I'm setting this up probably, but if you were to go to a medieval castle and you were served a cold shoulder of mutton, which is lamb, as I'm sure you know, it was a sign that you were not welcome. So if you were served a hot meal, that meant that you were welcome. Yeah. So
you were a cherished guest.
You were a cherished guest.
And you were being welcomed and honored in your home.
That's right. So this is one. So I have many problems with this theory.
Okay.
And by the way, this is a theory that is given much like sleep tight. So remember we talked about sleep tight. Matter of fact, this has been a few of these. So there was Paint the Town Red. There was sleep tight. There's this thing where there are these folk etymologies, they call them, right? And they're told on tours of places.
Right.
So you've got like an old castle, and this one was somewhere in Great Britain. I don't remember where. And this happened with Sleep Tight, somewhere in America, where they said if a guest was unwelcome, they would loosen the ropes underneath like the mattress of hay or whatever to make it less comfortable, so an unwelcome guest would leave. Right. Same thing. If you got that cold shoulder of mutton, it meant it's time to go. Right. And then there was the Paint the Town Red, where they said this is where Paint the Town Red happened, and it really was a folk etymology. I think that these. I was thinking about why do people love these so much? And I think it's because it's just satisfying. Yeah,
you get an answer. It's kind of clever, and it generally fits the context of whatever's being discussed. I would think this isn't true for a couple reasons. First being, back in medieval times, you're not wasting food to teach people a lesson.
Exactly.
That could be your last meal anytime that you're eating. You're not going to have the subtleness to go, well, we'll show them. We'll give them cold food. Right. Whoever's eating that food isn't going to send it back and say, can you throw this in the microwave? They're going to be happy they have anything to eat. Right. Even if it's cold. So I would think that would be reason number one. Reason number two is I don't know how common mutton was to be served, which brings me, as if you've mentioned that and a little bit of the research I did leading up to this, I've had lamb before. I've had lamb chops.
Sure.
And I believe the difference between lamb and mutton is aging. I'm fairly certain I've never had mutton. Have you had mutton before?
I don't think I've had mutton. Because I've only had lamb like once or twice. I'm not a fan.
And part of me wants to have it because the name it kind of goes both ways with me. It sounds gross.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it sounds pretty cool and stodgy. Like, you're not pulling up to McDonald's or going to a low class. You're not going to Applebee's and getting mutton. Even though now that I've said it out loud,
you might be
Mutton Wednesdays at Applebee's, I still wouldn't go. But that would be interesting to sit in on the marketing campaign.
I think it'd be Mutton Mondays. But
yeah,
yes,
and it'd probably be at O'Charlie's.
Yeah.
For
O'Charlie's.
When you don't have the budget for Applebee's, come to Mutton Mondays at
right.
O'Charlie's.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Mutton, it's funny that we have the same feeling about that, which is I've always heard the word and I've always thought it kind of sounds kind of gross, but then you're also kind of like, I don't know, man. Check that out.
I'd have a smoking jacket on and a pipe involved at some point.
Yeah, just to say I ate mutton or good sir, could you hand me the mutton? You know.
But getting back, no one's going to teach you a lesson by giving you cold food in medieval times.
No, and for another reason too. So you hit on the reasons why I immediately said this is I'll be honest. At first when I heard this, when I thought, oh yeah, it kind of makes sense. But then it was everything you said. It was like, no, it sounds good. Because like, what's your favorite part of like Thanksgiving is the cold turkey leftovers are delicious. So why would cold mutton be any worse? But then I also thought the other thing in medieval times, if you had an unwelcome guest, like you would just pour hot oil on him while he's sleeping or something. Or like,
just tell him to get out.
Tell him to get out.
Listen, we're dealing with the plague.
Right. Everybody's dying. They're getting stuff. Yeah, they're getting stuff under their skin.
Yeah.
People are dying of people. Like average lifespan is like 22, and you got boils half the time.
Yeah.
And we have an unwelcome guest. So here's what we're gonna do. Yeah. We're gonna loosen the ropes under their mattress and give them cold meat.
Yeah. Get out. We're not giving you our meat.
Get out.
Get out of here.
So this is definitely folk etymology. This one was not included in the Life of 1500s email, but it's on that. It's in that vein of raining cats and dogs. Sleep tight, I mentioned a bunch of times. So the first time this one appeared in print was in 1816, and it was Sir Walter Scott's novel, The Antiquary. So Sir Walter Scott has come up before, and when he wrote about it in the Antiquary, he mentioned it a couple of times, and he talked about, I'm not going to read it because he was a Scottish, actually he's a pretty interesting dude that we'll get to in a little bit, but he had mentioned it. He said, I must tip him the cold shoulder or he will be pestering me eternally. So I don't know if tipping someone a cold shoulder so they don't pester you is giving someone cold mutton, but what does it mean? Well, it definitely means snubbing someone, right? By turning one's back, showing them your shoulder. It's sort of like an emotional coldness. I mean, cold to you, right? So within a few years after Scott's Antiquary, cold shoulder started popping up in novels by William Thackeray, Charles Dickens, and it became a pretty popular idiom at that point. I think what complicates this one a little bit is there is a little truth to the shoulder of mutton thing, only in that it's sort of a pun, in a way, right? So like, there were multiple times it was used as a literary pun, tying the meat to the gesture. So, in the London Illustrated News in 1884, so we're getting a little more. This isn't just
the London News. This is the London Illustrated News.
So you know it's going to be illustrated, right? Just like Sports Illustrated. So there was a headline. The guy said, "The cold shoulder is not a palatable dish." So like zinger, it's saying a cold shoulder of mutton, but he was talking about being, somebody giving some other politician a cold shoulder.
But getting into that time frame where food is still pretty crucial, if you're dealing with people who have titles of sir, I could see this
Right.
being more just the whole medieval thing seems to.
Yeah. So no doubt. So the popularity of the phrase from, again, the 1820s, I'm not sure if I said when, but the Antiquary was in 1816, and then during the 1820s, it just continues to be popular. Charlotte and Emily Bronte, by the way, also would use the phrase of the cold shoulder. So, I mean, it's there. I mean, Mark Twain also.
Yeah.
Sir Walter Scott definitely was the one who popularized this, and actually who would have coined this.
So Sir Walter Scott, also to clarify, is not Sir Walter Raleigh, which the first key to, hint of that should be that their names are different, but they're always two people that I conflate when things get together.
Me too. I mean, the whole time I've been going, Sir Walter Scott, not Raleigh.
But Sir Walter Scott did write a book entitled The Heart of Midlothian.
Really?
Yeah.
The Heart of Midlothian.
Which I would thought, if you would have said that to me, I would think that's a Walmart off the turnpike. But maybe Sir Walter Scott would have another idea on that.
Yeah. That's
Midlothian
very
burn.
true.
Dutch burn on Midlothian.
We love you, Midlothian. Hey.
You're all right.
By we, I mean me.
Yeah.
Even though he's the one that coined it,
right?
The way he got it, you go, well, why did he from whole cloth come up with this phrase, tip the shoulder, the cold shoulder, give the cold shoulder? Mm-hmm. It actually comes from, he got it from, we think, and by we, I mean, again, I actually think this one is straight out the Wikipedia page, but couldn't find it anywhere else, is that it's a mistranslation of a Latin phrase, which I actually was hoping you could read for us, because you're our Latin scholar.
I am the expert, may I? Dedurat unum redactatum.
You got it. Thank you very much. So it was a mistranslation. It's really sad that your Latin accent is what I think of now if I see Latin words. So thank you for doing that for me. But Dedaret umerum residentem came from the Book of Nehemiah, chapter 9, verse 29, from the Vulgate Bible, which actually means stubbornly they turn their backs on you, which comes from the Septuagint Bible's Greek equivalent. And essentially the Latin humerus, which is often misspelled humerus, meant both shoulder and back. The original text, which they didn't kind of fix until later, meant turn their back to you, which is very common, more so than turn your shoulder. So it was this mistranslation that Sir Walter Scott read, and then he used that to say, turn a cold shoulder. So it was... And
let's just note a return from our season 1 favorites, the Greeks, who really haven't been here as much.
No.
But they're
back. They got taken over by Holland. But Greek is back. So that's it for cold shoulder. It's not meat. We got to talk about folk etymologies and why those are appealing.
Yeah.
A couple things about Sir Walter Scott that I find interesting. So Sir Walter Scott came up with a bunch of different idioms, but also that's sort of the least of what he was. We talked about, who is your guy from a couple of weeks ago? Was it Haywood? John Haywood, right?
Yeah.
What I thought was cool about John Haywood was how he was like kind of a statesman, but he also wrote novels and did all these things, and it's the same thing with Sir Walter Scott. And I don't think you see this anymore. Well, I mean, you see politicians writing books, but it's like the lessons from my father.
Yeah.
And
or the book I'm putting out before I try to run for president in 2 years.
Everyone does that. So weird how that happens now. But I mean, Sir Walter Scott wrote some really interesting stuff. He was a novelist, a playwright, historian. He was a historical novelist. He was credited too with bringing a lot of attention to, like we were talking about medieval stuff before.
Right.
Like how we really, if you think about the Middle Ages and like medieval times, there are tons of movies, there's tons of writing about this stuff, and he was one of the people that really brought that stuff into popular culture all the way back in the 1800s. But he wrote Ivanhoe. You have any thoughts about Ivanhoe? You heard of it, of course.
Yeah, it's a book that I pretend I've read.
Yeah,
when people bring it, like you bring it up.
Yeah, so I mean, Ivanhoe was a book that just was always on my grandparents' shelf. You know, it was one that just was on everybody's shelf for a while because I would of course never read it, but everyone had Ivanhoe. And after reading the description of it, which I won't get into, but it sounds really interesting. He wrote The Lady of the Lake, Waverly, The Heart of Midlothian, you brought up before.
Yeah.
Also Rob Roy, which
I have heard of because Liam Neeson. It was Liam Neeson in the what did that come before or after Braveheart?
It was the same year, I think.
Okay,
because they were both nominated for Best Picture that year.
The same way that there was 2 Lambada movies out at the same time.
Yeah,
and 2 disaster volcano movies.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like that. So I believe it was the same year. And Tim Roth, oh gosh, he was so evil in that movie. But anyway, that was a great movie. So he contributed a lot. We won't read down his whole bio, but he was definitely, I don't know if he's forgotten, but like, I don't think of him as that big of a deal, but he was a big deal. So
yeah.
The other thing was all the different sayings that he had. So he had a bunch of ones to choose from. Of course, the one that we just did, Cold Shoulder, was his. He also did Skin of Your Teeth. And then I thought it was funny that he did Go Berserk.
I saw that too, and that doesn't seem like somebody with the name Sir.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. And I didn't read up on it yet, but I also thought it was funny because I think I brought up going berserk in the Leroy Jenkins episode. I was like, we need Leroy Jenkins because there's not a lot of other ways to say it. I was like, go berserker mode or something, but he did that. One of the other ones he did was the term caught red-handed.
Okay.
And that's the other one we're going to do today. All right, so caught red-handed is one that I always related to getting caught like stealing something.
Right.
More than anything else. How about you? How have you thought about it?
Caught red-handed is, I've always heard you're caught doing something you're not supposed to, and it's clear that you did that. So you're caught, you have no excuse, you have no alibi.
Right.
You're caught red-handed. And it's one I've always used, and I think people still use that. Never thought of what the origin was, but it just you're caught dead to rights. It's obvious what you've done.
That's another one, dead to rights.
And never thought about what, why is the hand red?
Yeah, this is one I had given thought to as a kid and sort of just settled on, and then we'll talk about how off I was, because I had, again, just for whatever reason, never thought about it as getting caught doing something bad necessarily. It was just more like stealing. And so I'd go, well, why is it red-handed? And I go, somebody slapped your hand or something and it turned red.
That's a good thought.
That was sort of my thought. And then I was asking our friend Lincoln about it, and he thought the same. He actually thought the same thing, and I'm like, that's interesting. But it is more like what you said, which it's getting caught doing anything and being clearly to blame for it. And it's even more, I guess, damning than a smoking gun, finding a smoking gun. A smoking gun is good evidence against you. Getting caught red-handed is like a first-hand account of you did this thing wrong. Why red-handed, though? Well, it was in Ivanhoe, as I mentioned. Well, I don't think I mentioned that. So the aforementioned
Ivanhoe, which I pretend I've read.
That's the book that everybody, probably nobody in the last 100 years has read that book, but it's on a lot of bookshelves. But anyway, so it was in there. It was popularized by Sir Walter Scott. But did he actually come up with it? So we'll get to that. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was, have you ever heard of the Red Hand of Ulster?
I have heard of that. Is that a Game of Thrones reference?
Oh, no.
And I don't mean that in a funny way. Is it from something like...
Yeah, I mean, kind of. I mean, in a way, right? Like, the hand... Now I'm going to nerd out on that, but I won't too much. But I mean, the hand to the king was like the second in command to the king. As far as a red hand, I don't think there's any specific. I could be wrong.
So, is the Red Hand of Ulster? Is that from like a fantasy novel?
Or? Ulster is a place in Northern Ireland.
Oh, okay. So that's actually a real thing.
So it's a northern province in. Okay. Excuse me. It's a province in Northern Ireland. Okay. Now the reason I came to know about the Red Hand of Ulster is when I got a coat of arms. Having the last name McGinnis, I have a cool coat of arms, and it's got like the rampant lion, which is like that really cool lion that you know exactly what I'm talking about if you think about a coat of arms. Mm-hmm. But it also had this big red hand in the middle. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things a few years ago I had looked up to see, what is this red hand? It's kind of cool. And I thought about, caught red-handed, or, is there a reason for it being red? Mm-hmm. And there's a story which I thought was interesting. And I mean, you can tell me if you feel like this is maybe real or not, but it's the red hand is a cultural symbol mm-hmm. of Ulster. And one of the stories behind why they use this red hand is that there was a boat race mm-hmm. and the first to touch the shore of Ulster. So people migrating, and the first person to touch the shore would be the one to rule the province. Mm-hmm. And one of the contestants, or one of the sailors, guaranteed his win by cutting off his hand and throwing it to the shore ahead of his rivals.
Wow.
So that's how much he wanted it, and feels very northern.
I like that. I could see that happening. I was going to say, I thought the first person that touched the sand, because their skin was so fair, probably would turn red. But
yeah.
All right, I like that. That's some dedication.
So I thought that was cool, and it made me, I don't know, when I think about, first of all, I've talked about this before. Like, I don't think of myself as, we talked about this with St. Paddy's Day. Mm-hmm. My full name is very Irish or Scotch Irish, but I don't think of myself as that. I think of myself as American, but right. I do sometimes have to motivate myself. Like, let me give you an example. When I'm being challenged to, drinking or something, mm-hmm. and I don't really want to, but I'm not keeping up with somebody, I have to remind myself, damn it, I'm Scotch Irish.
Right.
Like, my ancestors would be...
Somebody threw a hand at the beach to win something and probably died immediately thereafter, but the principle's there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's I'm not saying it's apples and apples, but it's, whenever I'm facing something that seems insurmountable and I have to call back to my ancestors.
Yeah. What would the Irish do in this situation?
Exactly. So maybe my hand's going to get red from cutting it on a bottle or something. But the point is, I thought this was a cool story. Yeah. And even to the point where you're gonna definitely disapprove of this, but as I was working on my sleeve on my right arm, mm-hmm. tattoo wise, I thought a red hand might be kind of cool to mix in there, but I decided against it because there are still militants that use the red hand in Northern Ireland. Mm-hmm. They have the red hand commandos.
Okay,
and wait a minute. You just reminded me of something. So the Red Hand Commandos, mm-hmm. And I just didn't want to have a tattoo of something that could be misconstrued for being part of some sort of paramilitary group from Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
So that would be one of the better decisions I've made as it relates to tattoos anyway.
But if you are going to get a gang tattoo, I would say an Irish gang tattoo might not be the worst.
Yeah, so I might get the rampant lion, but probably not. So anyway, cool coat of arms, cool story. It's not that, but you just, mm-hmm. when you asked about Game of Thrones, I'm wondering mm-hmm. if you were, because there's no way you would know this unless you researched this.
Right.
The Wheel of Time is my real,
that's your go-to.
My real series.
That's so, Robert Jordan.
Yeah, Robert Jordan, okay. which was his pen name. But I started reading The Wheel of Time when I was in like 8th or 9th grade, and it's a wonderful series if you like fantasy. Mm-hmm. If you like Game of Thrones, mm-hmm. In my opinion, like Wheel of Time is better. So I read them both when I was younger. I read a bunch. I read Terry Brooks's mm-hmm. series of, all, I could go on and on. Right. That's a whole nother podcast. But the Wheel of Time is my jam. And mm-hmm. Matt Calthon, who's one of the 3 Tavern. So if you listen, all of y'all are gonna know about Wheel of Time because there's an Amazon series coming out soon. But
right.
He was a great military. He became a great, maybe a spoiler alert, but I don't mm-hmm. think so. I mean, it is a little bit of a spoiler alert if you actually care about the Wheel of Time series coming out. But he actually led the Band of the Red Hand, which was mm-hmm. Totally not related to this at all, which is why I would have thought you would have had no knowledge of Wheel of Time, so that's why my head didn't go there. But mm-hmm. That was his thing. And the reason he got that was due to the Red Hand of Manatherin, which Manatherin is the old country where the Dragon Reborn was born, and I've officially crossed over into nerd territory. But the Band of the Red Hand.
Band of the Red Hand.
Red Hand, caught red-handed. So, as Pee-wee would say, what's the significance? I don't know. There's no significance. None of this has anything to do with being caught red-handed.
Right.
But sometimes people do sort of get it a little bit conflated, thinking maybe there's something to do the etymology of getting caught red-handed with the Red Hand of Ulster. There's also no connection to painting the town red. What it means is you got caught. And this is why I never thought about the real etymology of it, was because I wouldn't think your hand would get red other than getting slapped. But really, if you're murdering somebody or you're poaching an animal or you're doing something, your hand's going to get red. And it's just simply a way to say, nope, if you go beat somebody to death, your hand's going to be red.
So it's also maybe a derivative of having blood on your hands too.
That's what
Perhaps,
it is. Yeah. So even though Sir Walter Scott popularized this and was the first person to say caught red-handed in Ivanhoe,
which we've all read.
Yeah, which everyone's read. Ivanhoe. I feel like there's some jokes there, but using the term red hand was used all the way back to the 1400s. I mean, the 15th century. So in the Scottish Acts of Parliament of James in 1432, there are many references by the Scottish legal proceedings that talk about people getting caught red hand. So since Sir Walter Scott, he pulled a lot of his fiction from these old accounts, he would have read that and said caught red-handed, and it became popular through that.
Another piece of writing by Sir Walter Scott was The Black Dwarf and the Tale of Old Mortality, which is also a video cassette that my uncle had under his bed that I found. But that's not a story.
I thought you were talking about Japanese Tommy there for a second. You remember Japanese Tommy?
I think he was in
Black Dwarf.
I think he was in that video.
Now, yes, my uncle had that too, and very disturbing. So.
Yeah. Also, since we're talking about Sir Walter Scott, I want to bring up again Sir Walter Raleigh, who is not Sir Walter Scott.
Yeah, Sir Walter Raleigh. Yeah. Tell us about. What do you know about him? But he
had some poems that I like because they fall into I don't know what the name of this category would be, but things that aren't dirty but kind of sound dirty. My Body in the Walls Captive.
Dude,
that sounds like that could be a.
That sounds like something that's like an early film that starred like Daniel Day-Lewis or something.
Yeah, like before he had a savings account.
Right, exactly.
On the Snuff of a Candle, Sweet Unsure.
Sounds like a Conway Twitty song, actually.
To His Mistress, which is pretty. That sounds like that's a Conway Twitty. And the last one, The Wood, the Weed, the Wag, which you can correct me. I think that's a Wolf Mother album.
I think it is. It's their debut album. Yeah. Well, I thought where you were going was it sounds like a Snoop Dogg album.
That could be. I think you could go a lot of ways with that.
The Wood, the Weed, the Wag.
Yeah, the Hood, the Weed, the Wag.
Oh, I thought you said the Wood, the Weed.
I did.
The Hood.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I'm stereotyping.
Long story short, there should be an album.
Yeah. And also, to again clarify, Sir Walter Raleigh is not Sir Walter Scott.
So in if we can go ahead and just recap.
Yeah.
If you take away nothing else from this, Sir Walter Raleigh.
Not Sir Walter Scott.
No.
Ivanhoe is a book that we're all going to claim that we've read. Sir Walter Scott actually is responsible for Cold Shoulder and Caught Red-Handed.
Yep.
Another phrase that he's responsible for is called the Back of Beyond, which just is something like I want to tell Three Sheets Girl the next time I see her and she asks about LARPing again.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, let me tell you, there's certain areas, the Back of Beyond, stay away from that. I don't care what you think we're going to do.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think
Not
I have
happening.
the Back of Beyond 2.
Yeah.
I didn't get the original, but it sounds amazing. I don't know. Oh, I have a cat. That's where I'm like, are the cats still here? No, that's Ramona. Yeah, that's my cat.
That fat cat couldn't have moved that much. All right. Josh. I think we recapped. I think
we did. That's it, man. So Sir Walter Scott brought a lot of good to us, and maybe we'll do some more of his in the future. But go read Ivanhoe, or at least put it on your shelf.
Or pretend you have. Get out. We're not giving you our meat.
Get out.
Just get out of here.